All right, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Recruiter Roundtable. I'm Adam Bleibtreu, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Creative Circle, and today I have the honor of being your moderator. I'd like to go over a few ground rules before we get started. The first is that we've put this conversation together today for you to answer some questions that you have about how to position yourself in today's new job market. Please be aware at the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a Q&A box. Please use that as we go through today's conversation to ask the panelists any questions. We will try to read them and get through as many of them as we can today. And those that we're unable to answer today, we will reach out to you via email and provide you information when we're done. Please be aware that we've received more questions than time will allow us to answer, but again, we will do our best job to get through as many as we can. For those of you that are unaware of us at Creative Circle, we are the largest creative staffing agency in the business, and we make people into teams. It's our job to help you as you manage the process through your career and the opportunities. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about are any questions you may have about filing for unemployment in times like today. Unfortunately, we're unable to help you do that, so you need to look for your country and your state, and each country, province, and state have their own unemployment offices. You're going to have to go there and register and chat with them about answers that you may have for the filing of your unemployment. Please feel free to take a screen grab of the information that's on your screen now. Great. So let's talk about today. Let's talk about what we're going to cover. We have an amazing panel today, and we're going to go through three primary areas of your questions: going remote, building your brand, staying connected. We'll have a Q&A with our panel, and then at the end of the webinar, we're going to put up some resources that we've put together for you to have as takeaways. Okay, now enough of me talking, and let's get to our amazingly talented panel. We have three great recruiters with us today to help answer your questions. I'm going to introduce them by picture, and then they're going to chat for a moment about their own background. We have Merritt Geer, Brian Pope, and Jillian Singerman with us today.
Hi everybody, it's Merritt. I've been with Creative Circle for almost 9 years now. I started in our LA office and then I moved to our San Francisco office, so I'm leading recruiting in the Bay Area right now. And before I was with Creative Circle, I was a candidate and I worked in marketing and design for a startup.
Hi all, my name is Brian Pope. I am a recruiter with Creative Circle in Boston. I have been with the company nearly 10 years, and I started designing about 13 years before that, first in web design, then graphic design and art direction. I did apparel design and worked with a lot of staffing agencies. Was really pleased to sign on with Creative Circle and find out that they were also looking to improve the experience both for candidates and clients in the creative space. So I really enjoyed helping folks along their way.
Jillian, you're muted.
That's totally good. All right, I'm Jillian. I'm from Toronto, Creative Circle. Have been here almost 7 years since the start of the office. Before this, I lived and worked in New York for about 7 years in media planning at a magazine publisher.
Fantastic. All right, there we are. All right, so first question that comes in revolves around this concept of looking for jobs in the job climate today, Merritt. And is anyone hiring? What are you seeing out there?
So there's no sugarcoating it. There's definitely a tough job market out there right now. We're seeing a dramatic change from a candidate-friendly market to a client-friendly market. Many clients have put their and pipelining candidates for roles. So this means you're still seeing jobs posted online. You may still have interviews lined up. And even if a client can't make a hire until the crisis is over, they want to see and pipeline those candidates. So what that means in terms of what to do when looking for a job, you should stay on top of your applications. When it comes to looking for jobs, I recommend a few things. So cast a wide net, but be very targeted. So tailor your resume for every application you send in. Make sure that you're reading the job description really carefully, that you are matching 90 to 100% up with that job description, because there are tons of applicants out there and the client has a lot to choose from. So you really have to strongly match that job. In addition, I would say find out who owns the posting or who's managing the hiring for the role. So instead of just applying to the job, find out who's really responsible for hiring and contact that person first. Right now, I would say it's more important than ever to be flexible. So while some of you may land your dream job soon, most of you are probably going to be approaching this next role as a stepping stone back into the job market. So that means maybe you have to be flexible on your targeted salary. Maybe right now you're open to doing contract work over full-time work, or working as an individual contributor versus management or leadership. So consider all the options, really think about what you can flex on to make yourself more marketable to a broader range of opportunities. And then finally, I would say yes to project-based work. I know it seems like it's just a one-off here and there, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen a candidate turn a project into a long-term commitment with a client, sometimes even a full-time job. And at the very least, you're making some cash while you're looking for that perfect full-time fit.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. So panelists, let's mute ourselves between questions just in case. I want to be sure the audio quality for our guests is as good as it can be. The other thing I forgot to mention is that we are recording this, and following our discussion today, we will provide a link to you so that you can go back and listen to it. So Brian, I'm going to go to you and ask you for any tips you have in finding an ideal remote client or remote opportunity.
Ideal remote opportunity, sure. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, Adam and Julie and everyone in marketing for putting this together. And for everyone who's attending today, obviously this is a time where we have a lot more questions than answers, just generally speaking. So it's nice to be able to, kind of offer this feedback loop. And as far as ideal remote clients, well, I think Marette's points were all really good as far as targeting to try and land your ideal type of work or your ideal type of client. But I can speak to how remote may differ from on-site. We definitely, I freelanced quite a bit as a designer remotely and learned pretty quickly to over-communicate. I used to have a teacher that said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach it to you. I'm going to tell you what I taught you. And it's that level of explicit communication that really is helpful. Specifically, you're off, you're doing your work, you come back. If it's not what the client was looking for, especially in the early stages of a project, they can say, hey, what am I paying for all this for if you're not even kind of delivering on what we had asked for? So, following up post conversation with clients to make sure that you're saying, this is what I'm about to go and do. I anticipate it taking this many hours. It's good to have that in writing just to make sure that it's there and you can point back to it. That's one difference I find with remote work. And, I know, again, ideal, but, just to make sure that things go smoothly, the ideal remote opportunity is the one that keeps giving. So you want to make sure that you're managing it well, especially in the early stages.
Fantastic. Thank you. Julian, you're based up in Toronto, and I wonder if you have any information or that you can share about applying for remote jobs in the US and how to work north of the border and south of the border.
For sure. So we actually get this question all the time on good days. Candidates, designers, writers, PMs, whatever have you, they want to know how they can apply to jobs and work in the States. Easy answer. Are you a citizen? Are you not? Do you have a social security number so that we can legally pay you in the States? If you do, then we'll introduce you to a recruiter in the city that you want to, work in or move to. We'll introduce you to the recruiter. You'll get onboarded, you'll get interviewed just like you did with the recruiters in Toronto. If you do not have a social security number, it's an easy answer. We cannot pay you legally. So of course that, you're working in Ontario.
Thanks. By the way, I don't want the audience out there, those that are watching, to think that I'm distracted. I have a list of questions in the chat room taking place over here, so I keep referencing it. I know it can be a little distracting for the two of you that are paying attention to me versus the panelists. A question came in, Merritt, that I'd welcome your opinion on, which is, what's the suggested number of jobs to apply for each day? And if they need to create a custom resume for each opportunity?
How is my echo now? Is it better before I answer? Okay, wonderful.
Oh, good.
So I think, to my point earlier, there's no set number of jobs per day to apply to. I would say carve out a certain amount of time per day that you're going to dedicate to your job search. So whether that's half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, don't drive yourself crazy. I mean, everybody is in a very strange headspace right now. So carve out what really works for you and for your schedule and for your life right now. And just do it by time. And when it comes to tailoring your resume, yes, spend the time tailoring your resume to every single opportunity. I find that you can shorten the time that you spend tailoring your resume if you do a few versions of your resume up front. So maybe you have one resume that works more towards leadership and management, and one that works more towards individual contributor. Or perhaps you have something that highlights more of your art direction versus visual design skills. So have a few ready to go so that when you're tailoring your resume, it really is just a matter of a few tweaks and you can cut down on the time when you're actively applying for jobs.
Great. Brian, a question came in about freelancing. An individual asked, they've been freelancing for 12 years plus, and how do you think opportunities will be affected now by virtually all work being remote?
Okay. So I'm assuming perhaps freelancing as a contractor as opposed to freelancing remote. I mean, across the board, short-term things are going to be lean. We have seen a drop in the number of jobs that are coming from our clients in all markets. It's not a surprise. I think it was referenced earlier that we've seen a lot of things sort of put on hold. I read an article yesterday calling this the great pause. I wonder if that will take hold in our collective conscious. But history tells us prior to COVID that remote work tends to be more project-based, meaning I've got this one need, right? And so that's why, you see a lot of, say, video editor roles perhaps are very often remote. You pick up a hard drive and you're off doing your work, as opposed to an account director where you're probably going to be on site quite a bit and dealing, directly with day-to-day needs. So that's a good way to get a foothold. And again, to Merett's point, if you are targeted in the type of projects that you're showing, if you're a designer, breaking those out into standardized parts, so that when you have the client that's looking for someone to help to roll out a bunch of mock-ups of emails, you're a copywriter, you have someone who's looking for even just quick hit product descriptions. If you've got it in your bag, you want to make sure that it's easily found, easily pointed to, so that you can kind of get your foot in the door in a project and then try and grow the relationship from there.
Thank you. Jillian, an interesting question just came in from someone that's in a remote market. So if you're in a smaller market or a market where you're not seeing a lot of activity with job opportunities, how do they reach out and connect with either other Creative Circle offices or other opportunities for remote work?
I mean, at this point, it's all about networking, right? We have an easy apply online option on our website. We're here. All recruiters are working at full capacity, hoping to meet, new designers, motion people, animators, whatever it is. So we're definitely here to facilitate and be the community for you, or help you, form a community. I think, to be honest, this webinar or any webinar you attend is a perfect way to make a community for yourself, to speak to people that are in the same boat as you. I think that always helps, just knowing that, this is so many people right now. So many interviews that I have, or so many candidates that I'm speaking to right now, I think all they want to hear is that it's happening to so many people. It's not happening because their work isn't good enough. It's not happening because they aren't a culture fit. It's not for no other reason than, clients and companies are needing to slim down. So this is a perfect way to start, I think, to form a community, make some new friends, work on your skills. So here we are.
That's great. Merritt, just to continue on with that, as we talk a little bit now about building your remote brand, how important or appropriate do you think it is for job seekers to use LinkedIn and begin to reach out and try and connect with potential or future employers on LinkedIn?
Muted myself. Sorry.
Right.
It happens to the best of us.
So, I mean, it's more important now than ever. LinkedIn is still the #1 tool that people are using to hire and to look for work. So if you never were a LinkedIner before, get familiar with it now. Similar to doing online education, this is part of your online education. So get familiar with the tool. It's a really great way, as I mentioned before, to find out who's managing specific job postings, to track down recruiters, to network, join groups. It's a really great tool to use for every single applicant. So highly recommend right now. Even though you're seeing some hiring freezes, get ahead of the curve right now. It's similar to what happens in the holidays. Those folks who are not aggressively going after jobs right now may end up at the bottom of the applicant pool after this returns to normal. So stay on top of it.
Got it. And then I'm going to start with you, Brian, but I'd love everybody's opinion on this. A couple of questions have come in around cover letters, customizing cover letters. How important, you think, in the reality of today, is the cover letter?
I have my own opinion about this, Adam, and it may not be shared by many. I feel as though cover letters come off as somewhat disingenuous, and as many cover letters as I read that are perfect, just as many have some mess up where they kept the old company name for the new company they're speaking to. It happens all the time, and to a rate that I think a lot of applicants aren't aware. So it makes me wonder how many people are even reading them. I really think if you're thinking in terms of user experience, we know people are looking at your resume, and there's prime real estate above the fold for an objective section or a summary that allows you to contextualize the experience that they're going to see chronologically in the way that you want. That's something you could customize, keep it quick, but it allows you to kind of say what it is you're looking for. And maybe as a blessing, it sort of allows you to say what you're not looking for. It might allow some hiring managers or HR folks to keep moving if you're expressing, yeah, I did some front-end stuff back in the day, but I'm really looking more for UI UX at this point. The person who needs the developer, maybe they don't call you, and I know we're looking for jobs, but it'll help you to dictate the conversations that you're having.
Agreement with Jillian, you and Merritt?
Yeah, I totally agree. Cover letters are a thing of the past.
I agree.
Wow, okay, cool. That was my dark secret there
Bold
for a while.
Excellent.
I think further on that, if I may, as my doorbell rings, so you realize we all are human. I think when you meet a recruiter or meet someone that is supporting you in your search, that person can act as your cover letter, whether it be an email intro, an elevator pitch about you. Recruiters will present you in the best light and almost act as your cover letter. So I think when using a staffing agency, a recruiting agency, whatever it is, they will act as a cover letter. And I think when you are applying on your own, think of a cover letter almost as like an elevator pitch about yourself. Clients don't necessarily want to know the things you think they want to know, like the drier stuff. They more so want to know about your personality, any hobbies like that. I feel like those are the things that set yourself apart and make you different.
I would second that. I would say if you are tailoring your resume to every opportunity, then there isn't a need for a cover letter. And to echo your point about sharing something personal, stay away from broad generalizations like, I work well with teams. It's going to say that on a resume. If you don't say that, then you're probably not somebody that wants to get hired, right? So find some fun anecdotes, something very personal, because when you're applying to a job, someone's going to say, oh yeah, the girl who had the yoga thing on the resume. That's what they're going to remember that sticks out. So do something personal, but not broad and general. And also keep your photo off your resume.
Oh, keep your photo off your resume.
No photos on your resume.
Thank you.
And I just one quick addendum, because I'm a firm believer there's no one prescription for all ailments, despite what some leaders in the globe might lead you to believe. So there may be companies or hiring managers that differ in their opinion about cover letters. Just as a heads up, right? There may be some that say, where's my cover letter, right? So of course there are going to be those folks. But in the aggregate, I think that you can find better places to tell your story than in that extra sort of almost trite attachment.
That great advice. And Jillian, a lot of marketing folks that I know who are also part of the job seeking universe have come to me and said, hey, how do I stand out other than the traditional set of experiences? And what I try to talk to them about is show me how they've moved the needle, how they've impacted. So what I look for, somebody standing out that has job experience where they can tell me that they've increased engagement, they've increased leads, et cetera. So in the world of the more creative end of the marketing and digital world, are there any other last tips you could give about things on your resume to help you stand out?
For sure. I think resume, Merritt spoke about this a little bit before, but just doing something different on your resume helps. I think now is the time to work on PDFs. I know that a lot of people think of, like, if they have a website, why do I need a PDF, right? I think, let's just say you're a designer or a copywriter. I think that making a PDF showcasing your presentation design or showcasing your social media design, now's the time to make those separate PDFs to send to the different roles, to send to, if you're focusing on a role that is heavy in digital, of course, now's the time to make a digital only PDF, an email only PDF, social media, photography heavy, event heavy. I think that's how, it shows that you understand what the role is and you've read the job description and you've done your research on the company. I think that the catered PDFs are a really good move, especially at a time like this when there is a lot of competition, unfortunately. I love PDFs, catered PDFs.
Merritt, I want to talk for a brief moment about the dreaded S word, salary. And how do you tackle the conversation and the questions around salary?
I'm going to answer that in a second, but to Jillian's point, I would say also explore like Google Drive links, because many times I get PDFs that don't come through due to this file size. Yeah. So try and send links too. So the salary question, the dreaded salary question. These are some of the hardest conversations to have. So you definitely, I get it. You don't want to price yourself out, but you also don't want to undervalue yourself. I know this specific question was asked from Allison in San Francisco, who I'm familiar with. Hi. But she was asked, what is your current salary? As of a couple years ago, it's actually illegal to ask what your current salary is. So the best response to this question is a direct answer. I'm targeting between 120 to 140K. So I'm just using those ranges for the sake of this conversation. Generally, great to give a range. Don't give a 50K range. A 20 to 30K range is usually what I see and what is, okay to use when you're quoting yourself. I would say if you're going through an agency like ourselves or working with a recruiter, ask right up front. We always discuss salary with our candidates, present our candidates at a specific salary range to a full-time opportunity right at the get-go. So you know right up front what range you're being considered at. If you're applying to jobs directly, it's okay to ask on the first interview what salary the client is offering. I know we sometimes get nervous having these conversations about money, but the more you have them, the more confident you will be having them. Oftentimes, HR as well during that first call, which should make the conversation a little bit easier. I would always recommend discussing this at the end of the first call. This should not be your first or second question. Use this time, even if it's a 30-minute interview, to gather information. You need information to be able to quote them, right? So ask about the scope of the role, how much leadership is involved, anything that you weren't able to really gather from the detailed job description, which you have carefully studied before this call, which will make your conversation come easier. So towards the end of the call, I would recommend asking them, what is your salary that you're offering for this role? So, disclaimer on this, I'm not sure why clients are elusive about this, but sometimes you may get the response, well, what are you targeting? So this is why I say be prepared. A good response to this is, I'm flexible depending on the total package and scope of the work, but generally I'm targeting roles in the 120 to 140K range. So I think all in all, make sure before every single interview you have that you are considering the pros and the cons of the role. Study the job description carefully. Is it close to your home? Do they provide commuter benefits? Can you access the company benefits online and weigh those into the total package? Are there stock options? Just come to the conversation with the salary range in your head based on the information available. So just be prepared to answer this all the time and you'll feel more comfortable doing it.
It's great. Brian, Jillian, any other thing you'd add to that?
No, I think that was said perfectly. I think people tend to shy away from asking and then they always regret not speaking about it or asking after the first call. And of course, I think people shy away from that. But you know, you want to make sure you're confident. You want to make sure you're going after something that you want. And I think the best way to do that is just, you know, talk about it.
Great. Obviously, we've reached at the moment 12:30. I think the panelists and I are happy to go on for a little bit longer and answer a couple more questions. Brian, I want to come back to you with a follow-on from what Merritt was talking about, which were great tips about an interview, coming prepared as part of our salary conversation. Anything you would add specifically now that all interviews seem to be done on video? Any specific video related to do or not do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, even preparing for this webinar, you know, it's we're all panelists and the same as an interview. You may have nerves when you're getting started. So anything you can do to kind of ease that burden. The difference between a remote interview and an in-person interview is you've got this horrible tech component that could rear its ugly head, right? You could be muted. There could be an echo. You can't connect. I had a candidate having an interview last week via Zoom. They couldn't get it set up. She called me and I could tell she was flustered. So the first thing I said was, don't let this affect you, right? It's not your fault. You know, we're probably just going to migrate to a phone call. So, you know, try to not let those little ticky-tack things, because of course you may be nervous from the get-go. Try to remain calm, and having a backup plan at the ready could actually show your resourcefulness, right? So it may not be a bad idea to find a way to communicate with that hiring party beforehand. What is your cell? You know, is there another way just in case, or, you know, do you do FaceTime? Just kind of finding out those other things. Aside from that, I mean, there's the typical, you know, what to wear. I think the rest of it should be pretty much the same as it would be for a normal interview. So, you know, aside from those tech issues, I would say just be yourself, have a great interview.
And wear pants. Wear pants. I think you have to, further to that, I think confidence is a big thing, regardless of in-person, remote, phone interview. I was doing dishes before this because that's what calmed my nerves. Everyone has their thing, right? I think confidence is a big thing. People can see right through that. Do some push-ups, do some sit-ups, jumping jacks, sing a song before, whatever you need to do. Everyone gets nervous and you get through it.
Just to add to that, a couple things. So I would say, normally I would say find a quiet place. But in these times, we are all in the same boat. So a really great icebreaker when you're on a Zoom or video client with a video meeting with a client is to just say, just as a disclaimer, I'm here with my little kids. So if you hear some background noise, it's a really wonderful way to start a dialogue about your personal life, which don't often get addressed during an interview. So feel free to mention it up front as a disclaimer. Don't be nervous about that. Everybody is in the same boat. Secondly, if you are being scheduled for a video conferencing interview and you've never used that tool, download that tool, test that tool right after that interview is booked, not 5 minutes before the interview is scheduled to happen. That is when I see most of these disconnects happen. It is 100% on the candidate to make sure they are familiar with that tool by the time the interview happens. It's pretty rare to have an interview scheduled for 30 minutes later. So if that happens, then all is fair game. But once you have a Zoom chat scheduled, download it that very next second and practice with your friends.
It's a great point. Yeah. As soon as you know that it's a Zoom or a WebEx, call a friend, text a friend, get some help if you're unfamiliar with it. The other thing that we talk a lot about in terms of being nervous for presentations and video interviews is understanding the physiology in your body. Your pulse is going to go up. You're going to get nervous. You're going to believe that you're losing your train of thought. And the reality is just the opposite. It's been proven time and time again that in moments of high stress, our recall actually gets better. And we actually listen and respond to cues better. So as long as you're understanding that this is the process your body goes through in the first 3 to 5 minutes of a conversation, you'll be fine. Just use it to your advantage. And like you said, take a quick walk around the apartment, do something to distract you, and then come back to it. All great tips. We probably have time for 2 more questions. One which I think is really pertinent is a couple of people have asked about finding the source of the job posting and using tools like LinkedIn. Merritt, Brian, Jillian, anybody that's got some insight into how to become an investigative journalist to find the poster.
So it is a little bit of a tricky art, I would say. So you can do it 2 ways. Well, at least the way that I approach it. You guys might have some new ways to add to this, but on LinkedIn, oftentimes, this is echoing again, huh? Sorry, guys. On LinkedIn, you'll see that someone is actually the owner of that job posting, so you can chase down and see who's posted it. If you also see a job posted by a specific company and you can't see that it's owned by a specific person on LinkedIn, you can also check out the company website. Check out their internal team, dig in through their website and see who's on the HR team. See, if it's an art director role, then pretty sure that reports into a creative director, right? So try and chase down wherever you can that contact, hop back on LinkedIn and then try and message them there. So it's part of my job to start rooting through these, but it's a little harder as a candidate, but you just have to start looking around doing your research.
Great. Brian, Jillian, any other tips there?
Brian unmute himself.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I guess I'm somewhat privileged now as a recruiter to sort of typically have a lot of those answers. But, I think it's a small industry. And then once you get into a certain region, it becomes even smaller. So, you know, it doesn't take too much research, I think, as you start to look at the clues of even the nature of the posting, right? If it's more of a B2B, you know, play or what have you, you can start to guess. In Boston, it's probably a tech company, you know. And the other thing you can do, as we were talking about earlier, expanding your network, is start to ask around, right? Somebody knows something. And especially if it's an industry that you feel you have a shot at, then you probably have some inroads. It's a good way to just kind of begin conversations with other former colleagues or contacts. But, you know, by expressing interest, and again, provided you're a good fit, and that's probably why you're looking, they're probably looking for you too. So doing a little bit of snooping actually could pay big dividends, but I would begin with my network.
That's great. Jillian, just another insight or two from you on this concept of networking and referrals, particularly going down ever so slightly. How do you build your network? How do you begin to reach out and increase your sort of awareness in your peer community?
This great example, this webinar. I think there are so many resources out there. Again, back to this is happening to so many people at the same time. Sorry, I have a baby crying in the background.
Oh, good.
Yeah, nap time just ended. You know, everyone's in the same position. Get on these webinars, free resources, get your skills up, lynda.com. Like there are so many things to be doing that people in the same boat will be doing. That'll get you to network. That will, of course, referrals are hard to get, right? Everyone is looking for referrals. Best place to do it. I see the chat here. Everyone's, you know, putting their LinkedIn profile, meeting each other. We did one of these last week. I can assume this will not be the last one. I think that getting on these, like at this time and always, are the best way to network. I see 209 participants here. That's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for tremendous insights. There was a question. Yes, we've recorded this, and yes, we will do our best to keep the chat and the Q&A accessible. Give us a day or three to go through those processes, but we will keep you up to date. We obviously have your registration information, so the marketing team will get back to you. Merritt, last question of the panel, and then I'm going to let you each sort of give a closing perspective. If someone has gotten an offer that got deferred for an indeterminate period of time, should they stop looking? Should they keep looking?
Keep looking. Always keep looking. An offer that has been deferred is not an offer anymore. So don't keep your eggs in one basket. I think a lot of clients right now, as much as they're hopeful that full-time hires will return to normal, we are in unprecedented times. We don't know what budgets look like. I personally feel like we're going to see a huge uptick in freelance and contract work after this until things settle a little bit and we know what financials look like for Q4 and Q1 of next year. So I would say the second you hear that things are postponed, start aggressively going after other opportunities. If they come back with the offer and you're still available, fantastic. But if they lose you, then that's their bad. So do what you can to protect yourself and make sure that you have an offer and a paycheck coming in.
Great. I have one last question that's being asked of me, and I'm smart enough to ask it. I appreciate everybody hanging in there because we've run a little over time. Brian, Jillian, I will let either of you or both of you comment on this. Do you see any typical mistakes applicants make when submitting their 2 to 3 bullet points along with their resume as they apply to Creative Circle jobs? Any feedback there?
Brian?
Sure. Typical mistakes, no, I think that you're already on the right track by providing specifics. You know, our job when we first meet with a candidate is to come up with our best boilerplate synopsis of what we think we'll be bragging about in the future, right? A combination of what you want us to brag about and what we think is most saleable in the market. And we try and come to that. But it's not a magic bullet. It's sort of our best guess. It's our best shot at it. And we're always, always massaging that per submission. So you already have a leg up. If you've met with the recruiter, we already have that ready to go. And you could always ask your recruiter for your bio too, if you're curious in the way you're being pitched. It sometimes is helpful to see the way that we see you so that you can augment it strategically as you reply. But by giving those bullets, that's really the huge thing. It can be tricky too, because a lot of our clients, I can only imagine it's everything in the kitchen sink in the job descriptions that they're putting together, all the things they would love to have, because wouldn't we love to have them all? So to know what the priorities are of that job can sometimes be tricky. You don't have to list all of the things, but usually trying a top line down perspective of it seems to me that these are the major broad strokes, and addressing those is huge. To Jillian's point, love specific capabilities decks or PDFs, micro case studies, one pagers, kind of saying, look, I've done something similar to this. I always say for such a creative industry, nobody has any imagination when it comes to hiring people. So knowing that is half the battle. How do you target that messaging, much like your own branding campaign for that specific thing? So again, if you're doing those bullet points, and frankly, you don't have to be very formal with us. We don't need a cover letter. You can do sentence fragments for all we care. Just, give us the sort of bones and we'll work with it from there.
And I think on a resume, having 2 to 3 bullet points at the top, if you usually have a cover letter and you are now being discouraged to have a cover letter, like the 2 to 3 bullet points at the top, make sure they're relevant to the job. No one really, I think Merritt, you mentioned this before, but clients, when looking through your resume, aren't going to care if you're detail oriented, organized, you can type however many words per minute. Like that's not what clients are looking for. I think, for design at an agency, it's going to be the types of campaigns, the types of clients and brands you've worked on. For, not that we do sales, but a biz dev heavy marketing and sales role, they're going to want to look at numbers. For a social media copy role, they're going to want to know what technical skills you have in the social media space, whether it's Hootsuite, whatever it is. I think that definitely you can cater the 2 to 3 bullet points dependent on the job you're applying to. And I think that will be a great help.
Fantastic. All right, Merritt, last thoughts from you, and then we'll wrap it up.
I think I'm just echoing what everybody else has said here. This is, unfortunately a very trying time for all of us, but remember to bring your personality into your interviews and into your resume to stand out from the crowd. Never try to misrepresent yourself. Clients will see through that right away. Be honest about your skill set, but tailor your information. If you see software skills that you're like, oh yes, I've actually used that, and it's not on your resume, you need to add it on your resume right away. So make sure that you've really carefully thought through that. Practice interviewing with your friends on Zoom, maybe during a virtual happy hour. Be like, hey, I just want to run some interview questions by you. Do all the things you can do right now while the work coming in is a little bit slower. And sign up for online education. It's a great way also to network. A lot of times you'll sign up for a course and you'll have access to all the other people who took that course. So that is a great networking tool as well. And you're getting additional certifications that you can add to your resume. So use the time productively.
Adam, can I chime in just from a structural note as I'm looking at some of the IMs? I just want to stress that we are designed at Creative Circle to be self-correcting. So, if you are applying for roles that you feel you're perfect for, you're providing bullets, if I'm reading between the lines of that bulleted question and not getting a response, then something may be amiss. You always can go back to your point recruiter who first interviewed you. If they're still with that location. If they're not, you can call in and say, hey, my recruiter's no longer here. Can I talk to someone? That is part of our responsibility in this relationship to make sure that you have a point person. Now, of course, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, the really squeaky wheel gets removed. You want to, manage that relationship well. But we want to hear from qualified talent. So if you reserve, certainly check in with that point person if you feel like something is amiss. But if you see an amazing opportunity, I would be aggressive and reach out to my point person as well. I just don't want to do that so often that it wears thin, right? It's a relationship. But there's no reason that someone should continually be replying to roles that they feel they're a good fit for and not be hearing back, right? That's why you have a point person here in the first place.
Fantastic. I so appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your expertise. It's really been wonderful. I hope that based on the chat, it seems we've gotten some pretty phenomenal engagement here. Julie, we're going to go to the slide for some information. Again, Brian, Jillian, Merritt, thank you all so much. We'll mute you guys. We're going to pause the recording in a second. Panelists will come back when this is over, so don't go away. We have more resources available. Please feel free to take a screen grab of this or go to the Creative Circle website, and in the top nav, you'll see the blog, and a lot of these articles plus more are there. Feel free to come browse around. We really believe that there's some solid content there. If you need more information on COVID-19, we have a health and safety page on our website. It gives you feedback and it gives you instructions on how to notify us if you've had any recent travel, if you need to notify a client that you're currently engaged with that you're not feeling well. Again, peruse this, take a screen grab if you need to. And then last but not least, I want to thank you for being a part of today's conversation. Brian, Jillian, Merritt, it's been wonderful to have you on. For Julie and Catherine and the team, Jackie behind the scenes at Creative Circle, really appreciate your hard work. We will try to do one of these every other week. We will reach out and notify you as previous attendees. And again, thank you so much for being a part of it. Everybody stay healthy. Everybody stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.